Hello, beautiful human being. Welcome back to the Ryan Magic Show. Today's episode is going to be more like a diary entry than it is this is a topic and here's what I feel is important within it. And so the topic that I've labeled this to be is I'm going to be meditating full-time in an ashram in India for 3 months. I'm moving into an ashram. And that is the big life shift that's going to be happening. It's the big extreme thing that's happening. But there has been a slow stirring internally within me for a while that has moved me and impacted me to get to that point. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to vulnerably process the way I've been shifting my perspective on life. So before we get into the episode, my little spruik today is leave a review. I would love if you left a review on here just to help inspire other people to check out the podcast, and so I can continue to do what I love and have more people that I can serve through the wisdom that I've accrued in life. Now, let's jump into today's episode. So it has been an interesting last 6 months for me. We're sitting at the start of May that I'm recording this podcast episode. And this year there has been a lot of things happening. I've facilitated at least 5 different retreats or workshops. And I've run 3 or 4 seminars. And I've been doing content and podcasts, and all that's been happening, but it has not been at all what my focus has been in my inner world and where I choose to spend my time. They've just been moving along, continue to run new Heart's Prayer events, continue to run more Art of Fulfillment workshops, continue to run deeper spiritual retreats, and continue to support and facilitate different events that I feel are aligned as well, and practice facilitation, be of service, and go on my own inner journeys as well. That's my career of service in terms of what I chose to spend my time on. But from sometime late in 2023, so about 6 months ago to now, I've been feeling very, very internal, and not something that's been like a conscious decision. I'm going to choose to be internal because that's what I should do and that's the right thing to do. I've been pretty perceptive of what my inner world has been guiding me towards for the last few years of my life, and been organically moving in the way that I'm being led. And it was a strange feeling because I didn't really have anyone else that I was close to in my life that I felt was also moving in that internal direction. And so it wasn't something that was motivated by anyone else. I got to the end of last year and starting to reflect on 2023, and usually around New Year's time, I will be feeling into what the next year is going to be about and what are the goals and the exciting things that I want to tweak on my vision board, and what do I want to go out and adventure and do next year. But none of that really appealed to me. None of that really appealed to me at all. And I remember we're getting towards Christmas time, and Shana was excited to vision board and set goals, and I just didn't want to do it. I just didn't really care. I didn't feel the pull towards it at all. And I actually went to a vision board workshop with Shana just to go along, connect, spend some time dropping in. But I actually have my vision board. I can probably reach from here without pulling my headphones out. Yeah. And this, all the things that I put on it felt pretty aligned. But if I read out what I have on here, timeless love, breathe, sacred, it's all here and now. Be, the power of silence, embracing community, deepen, my dear, meditation, being, self, with a capital S, love, smile, and then there's just a bunch of photos of nature. There's also sacred sex in there as well, and also a photo of symbolizing working on the relationship with Shana, and also the letters FP, which stands for functional patterns, which is the postural movement training work that I do. So, and also breathe. I'm not sure if I read that out. And so it's very interesting because, and the other thing that was written on here, and there was some symbols of, were sunflowers and star, just star. It says star somewhere, and there's an actual image of a star somewhere. And the star to me it was funny because over Christmas time, for Christmas, my best friends bought me a soft toy star. It's like a soft toy of a star. And Shana also got me a star soft toy that's same brand, different style of star. So to me, the star is the sun. And to me, the sun is a symbol of God and a symbol of spirit, because the sun is what gives us all light. It is what allows things to be seen. So I see the sun as a metaphor for awareness, and awareness is the thing in life that I feel most grateful for. I feel most grateful for being able to have awareness, to be perceiving what's unfolding in front of me in my life and actually be present to witness it and experience it. And so I have a lot of devotion and reverence for the sun, which is a star, which is awareness. And so looking at this, there's no expand my followers to 1 million people. It's deepen, meditation, and it's just a bunch of wholesome qualities that are about being and depth. And that's, in all honesty, all I've been feeling the call towards. And along with that depth has felt, yeah, I would love to pay that forward and to support others that feel earnestly called towards depth themselves. But it hasn't felt this, like I haven't felt like I've had this need to do that. And so far over the first 4 months of the year, what my life has looked like is it's been very spacious, very spacious. I've done a lot of service. But it hasn't been something that I've forced into my life. It's something that's just naturally presented itself. Sure, I've said yes. I've booked venues. I've showed up. Yes, I've saved money. I've made money. All of these things, but they haven't come from a place of force at all. It's just been something that I would like to include, but not something that I'm attempting to drive the growth of or take massive action in. Just something that's been ticking along. And so earlier in the year, let's say 2 months ago, the idea popped up of the opportunity to, it just felt like almost a distant idea that was unfathomable, or it's just something I never gave myself permission to consider, but it had been on my radar as something that is possible for many years. Just didn't really think I'd do that in this lifetime, which was a meditation teacher training. That is it's a full initiation. It's a lot more of a rigorous process of learning to become a teacher than what I did 5 years ago when I became a meditation teacher through the One Giant Mind meditation technique. And I saw this opportunity through my Vedic meditation teacher to go to India and go through a process that I know exists because my colleagues, my peers that I learnt and studied deep Vedic spiritual wisdom from 5-6 years ago went through, a bunch of them went through that process and became Vedic meditation teachers and did this experience that I've now chosen to actually do myself. And so I was contemplating, wow, how cool would it be to do something like that? It'd be a once in a lifetime opportunity, because without going fully into what the process involves in super detail, it involves a lot of meditating for most of every day. Most of the day, every day for 3 months straight. So there's that, and then there's the learning of the deep spiritual wisdom that underpins the Vedic tradition, where the wisdom has been passed down through who cognized it originally 5,000 plus years ago. And how is it being handed down without technology, computers, even before writing? It was passed down orally from generation to generation. And so it's about learning about that in depth and then being able to be a really embodied teacher. And so I've been practicing meditation for almost 7 years now, twice a day, probably averaging around 90 minutes a day. And I've been teaching meditation for about 5 years. There's something about this experience that feels like an initiation. The opportunity for what feels like a very rare opportunity to have qualified to be able to become a teacher in something that has had such a profound impact on my life. And so coming across this and just contemplating the idea of, whoa, this would be cool. And then realizing, hang on a second, I'm at a point in my life now before having kids. I'm at a point in my life now where I do have more spaciousness and I haven't cultivated all this responsibility and momentum in what I teach now and what my modality and body of work is about now. This could be something that I could actually do. And so it was something that just felt really exciting. Now, a year ago, it would not have been exciting at all to go and meditate for 3 months straight. Anytime up until this point, it wouldn't have been exciting or expansive at all. But when the timing is aligned, that feeling shifted, and that timing was this year. And so I realized, hang on, this has been my theme and what I wrote down on my vision board all along at the start of the year. So I decided to do it. And there was a fair bit of resistance to letting go. I thought, oh yeah, it'll be fun. And it'll be, the meditation part would be the fun part. It'd be does it align with my movement patterns? Am I going to regress on all the postural work that I've done? Will it actually be healthy to be on a vegetarian diet for 3 months? And I had these stories of, is it aligned with my values? And I realized that it was a bit of inbuilt resistance to the actual process of letting go that's going to unfold when I go and spend so much time in spaciousness. In space, as Joe Dispenza would say. So that's something I've decided to do. And that's something that I'm doing from the start of June to the end of August. And I'm really, really stoked about it. Now, what I've been feeling into and what I want to let you guys in on in terms of how my perspective on life has shifted is I know that a really big part of what lights me up in life is being of service being of service using my voice and being a speaker and a teacher, and it really excites me, always has. And that's a really big part of what I love doing. And what I've noticed over the last few years as I've opened my heart more and more, and I've learned to feel more unconditionally loving of who I am. So less attached to my image as a person in this world and less attached to needing external validation from doing service and people saying, thanks for serving, and me being able to tick off, I've got this many followers, I've had this many people like my post, I've had this many clients come on board and made this much money, and all these ways for me to try to feel good about myself through these externals. Over the last, particularly the last 6 months, but over the last year, 2 years, the need for that has dropped a lot. And I've been finding myself feeling a lot more content in who I am in a slower paced lifestyle. I was very addicted, and I'm not saying that I'm enlightened now or anything like that, but I was on the more extreme end of the spectrum of addiction to dopamine. So short-term gratification, need the hit. If I went on a trip somewhere, it'd be, what can we do? Let's do a hike. I need to challenge myself this way, and finding ways to get dopamine. And over the last couple of years, I've been noticing the sensitivities in my nervous system underneath all of that busyness that I was using to plug that anxiety and to feed it, and that my mind was using to stay in the driver's seat, to stay in control and keep me sedated and distracted, essentially. And as I've had that fog move over the last year and a bit, it's like my consciousness and my body and my consciousness has wanted to engage in a little bit of the polarity, really slowing down. And I know I've been slower over the last 6 years since I pivoted out of running a high growth business. And the letting go process has been in stages, and the degree to which I've been letting go has been deepening. And so all for a very specific reason, and all for divinely orchestrated to support me with the way that I can be of service in the world and have a really beautiful, unique experience of life. And I'm really grateful for all of it. Now, as I was saying, contentment has been entering my life for the first time ever, where I'm actually feeling a lot more full and a lot more whole with a lot less need for fancy items, living in a flashy place. At the moment, we're living in Shana's parents' place and staying here. It feels awesome to me. I'm loving it here, and not needing to stay in fancy accommodation or needing to hit massive business goals. I've been feeling a lot, or do crazy activities all the time. There's just been a massaging out of these addictive tendencies, even with exercise, doing functional patterns, which is a modality of movement that's centered around aligning us to the way that our body was designed to move, to walk, run, throw, stand. And that essentially meant a couple of years ago when I started that, has it been a couple of years? No, it hasn't been. Exaggeration there. It's been like a year and 5 or so months since I've been doing it pretty full time, or pretty weekly, a couple of times a week with a one-to-one coach. And that meant letting go of all other forms of movement. And whenever I was feeling antsy or anxious, I would always just go for a run. And look, in society, that's celebrated. It's definitely a healthier form of processing emotion than trying to avoid it with heroin. And it's been beautiful for me to recognize the more nuanced ways that my system attempts to distract, even if it's celebrated by society. Like, I worked really hard in the past. Society thinks hard work is good. You know, work hard. It's a great quality to have. And sure, it can be. But that for me was a way that I was escaping the moment, escaping the pain that sat in the spaciousness of the moment, of the present. And same thing with exercise. And so even stripping back exercise, stripping back the amount of food that I'm eating and the range of food that I'm eating and the intensity of the flavors that I'm eating, and just deriving a lot of, and not just deriving fulfillment from the simplicity, but actually feeling a bit of a need to be living simply, and a bit of resistance, I'm going to call it, to intensity and satiating, dramatic ways of approaching life. And so that's what's been happening to me over the last 6 months. That's the way that I've been feeling. What excites me a lot is doing nothing. If I'm going to be really honest, just doing very little. If I had it all my way tomorrow, it's not my alignment, but in terms of what feels like a strong preference would be to wake up in the morning, read in bed, have a bath, go sit in nature for a bit, have some nice food, and catch up with a friend and have a quiet chat. And then have an early night. Go to bed early, read a little bit in bed, and that's it. If I did that, I'd be very content. That would be really nice. And that's the way that I've been approaching life. Now, in my thought process, because I still have dreams and desires and things that I'd really love to experience in this life, service, and I've got dreams, as you can probably imagine, around making a difference in the world, speaking on stages, having a global movement, and these kinds of things. They still excite me. I just feel that I have a sense into the pace of the way that my life is unfolding, and I feel very at peace and very patient with that unfolding. And so I'm just going to pause for a moment and kind of take stock of what I've said so far for my benefit, and also just to keep things simple and contained. I've been feeling very slow, and the desire to go slow, the desire to go deep. That's been that's all that's felt expansive for me over the last 6 months. And that's very much what I've been doing, even though a lot's actually happened. A lot has happened. I've had a lot of solid financial and business wins and done a lot of workshops and facilitation, and I've learned a crazy amount, and I've had lots of catch-ups with friends, and there's been lots of beauty and lots of experiences and lots of awareness and growth in relationship as well. But it hasn't been my priority. And so then the opportunity to go to India came up. I was like, yes, let's have at it. This feels expansive. It feels aligned with some resistance that I overcame. And now I'm going to India to spend 3 months full-time meditating in an ashram over there. And what I was just sharing before is I actually desire going slower. And it feels very important. It feels very meaningful for me in terms of the long-term journey that I have here as someone just to enjoy the human experience, and also as someone that has a desire to be of great service in the world, like really impactful and meaningful service. Now, to pivot my updates and what I have been thinking about a little bit in flavor from personal approach to life to professional approach to life, like I said, I've got those dreams. And what I've realized over time is that as a coach and as a author and as a speaker and a teacher, I've realized that my capacity to deeply serve in a really meaningful and impactful way is contingent pretty massively on my level of embodiment. My capacity to have self-awareness and insight is so important. And so because I do really care about those dreams that I have in my heart, and I do really desire to live a life of service in a really impactful, meaningful way, even though I could rapidly market spending heaps of money on ads and whatnot to get a bunch of clients right now in a certain way, it's not, I'm very aware that it's not the journey required. It's not the most effective way to create the service that I desire to create. And what's required for me, the more that I've been deepening and becoming self-aware and aware of my ego patterns and my insecurities and my trauma and understanding myself, trauma, the world, the spiritual path more and more, I've realized that just quite honestly, there's a lot of space and opportunity for greater embodiment within me. And if I really feel into the people that I'm most inspired by in the world, and I'm inspired by incredible beings. I know you like to learn from really incredible masters. You want to learn from masters. If I look at my bookshelf back here, this is some of the favorite books that Shana and I have that we've brought into this temporary room while we're staying at Shana's parents' house temporarily. But some of the books here that I most love, let's look at The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Now, I know that his book was published off the back end of 40 odd years of research and rigor and greater level of mastery in trauma. And that book is incredible. I don't necessarily feel called, not that there couldn't be value in there for me, but I don't feel called to read a book that someone that I'm Facebook friends with has written off the back end of being a coach for 5 years. And they did a breathwork certification 2 years ago, and they've worked with 100 odd people, and they've got some cool ideas they're trying to get out there, and they want the book to go out there. So they be of service with what they know, which is definitely still impactful for people that they work with, but it doesn't excite me. It excites me to learn from Wim Hof, because Wim Hof's been practicing this for decades. And that is where I really derive the most earnest pull to learn from, when I know that someone's really embodying something. If I look at other people that are up on this book, you got the Attached book, written by multiple psychologists and scholars on attachment theory. And that book is so incredible. There's so much depth of wisdom in there. And I want to learn from that, not someone that has some opinions around attachment theory, but still is single and struggling in their relationship to find a partner. I really want to learn from someone that's embodied. And I've realized myself that, sure, I've grown a lot, and sure, I have a lot of beautiful embodiment that I've derived over my personal growth journey for the last 15 years, but I really see the student hat that I'm wearing. And don't get me wrong, I'm wearing a teacher hat too, and I run workshops, and I'm an amazing facilitator, and I've got a beautiful integrated perspective of life from all the work that I have done. But in terms of the service that I really want to have in the world, I've just realized that there's a long journey, and I'm so grateful and excited for every stage of that journey. But I'm settling into a path because I've worked on my attachments to significance and need to get all this money and grow, and I need to feel good. I'm not doing good enough. So I need to go faster and bigger, and that's all. I'm pretty solid. Like I said, I'm feeling more fulfilled than I ever have before. I'm feeling like I can pull happiness, fulfillment from the simplicity. The most fulfilled I've ever been, and arguably for the last 10 years, I probably have the least satiating lifestyle, even though I'm in actually a really strong position materially. I don't need much to feel solid. And what that's given me is a really big gift, and it's an invitation for you too, is that I can make decisions that I perceive are going to be most effective in the long term, because I'm not desperately attached and feeling scared of how I'm doing in the short term. Because I know I'm already doing amazing. I already feel epic with where I am right now. And so I'm really settling in. Think about Jordan Peterson. He's been a clinical psychologist for 40 odd years. He's worked with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands through thousands and thousands of sessions with people. So his perspectives on life, and as a Harvard lecturer that studied history and anthropology and understands politics, his map of the world is very well-rounded. There's a deep breadth that underpins what he shares. So he's not scrolling on Instagram, sees someone's opinion, goes to a gathering with a bunch of people around, and then debating just off the back end of regurgitating what that person saw from a reel that's not even fact-checked. He's got a deeply thorough perspective of life that is informed from so much life experience and wisdom that's been gleaned from working with thousands and thousands of people and learning from lots of different avenues or angles of how life and history and the universe works. And so I trust that there's wisdom in there, even though he does still have blind spots and his perspective isn't taking everything into consideration. It's taking a lot into consideration. So there's a lot of depth and rigor there. Brene Brown has been studying this for a couple of decades. Her minimum 20 to probably 20, closer to 25 years now of deeply researching and studying something thoroughly. And so because I really desire to give the most well-rounded and truth-based wisdom to the world and service to the world, I want to make sure that my insecurities and ignorance isn't plaguing the service that I'm having. And inevitably it is right now to a small degree, but it's the least that it ever has. And I'm excited to continue to purify the place through which I serve, get as little of my own stuff detracting from the service that I'm having to people in the world. So, yeah. So that's a long way of saying I'm feeling very patient with my approach to service and the world. And look, I feel really, I've got a deep knowing that I'm going to continue to impact more people, but I also have a bit of a knowing that my service in the world will ramp up to thousands of people and potentially millions, maybe. That definitely feels like it's in the field of what I'm here to do. And so I just don't feel like I'm in a rush. And I feel like to really, truly and deeply impact people, it's going to require some insight that goes beyond my current perspective of life, even though I perceive that I do have some beautiful insight. Now, what has that led me to do? That's led me to be in this interesting dilemma recently. where I've been feeling just the desire to deepen my relationship with spirit, deepen my relationship with the unmanifest, with timeless love, and my understanding of God, my understanding of spirit, my understanding of soul and creative potential. And that's led me to be spending a lot more time meditating, 2 to 3 hours a day of meditation, and doing a lot of learning. I've been reading a really powerful book recently, and it's a big book, so it's taken me quite a while to get through because I tend to be not necessarily a slow reader, like my eyes can't read, or I don't understand how to spell, or I'm academically impaired. It's because I really like to soak everything in. But I'm reading this book called the Mahabharata, and it's known as one of the biggest epics of all time. And it's sourced originally, cognized by a Veda, or like a man named Vyasa, and Vyasa means the sequencer of knowledge. And there's a legend behind it, and this story was passed down and then written in scripture, and it's transliterated by an author called Ramesh Menon. But this Mahabharata, in this transliterated version I've been reading, is solid 1,500 pages across 2 volumes. That's almost 4 kilos. So when that came in the mail, I was like, what the hell is this delivery? I didn't order anything that's 4 kilos because it said it on the package. And then I opened it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the books I ordered. They're enormous. And these books contain within, let's say it's 200 or 300, between 200 and 300 chapters long. Within this whole book, the Mahabharata, I think 12 of the chapters is the Bhagavad Gita, which is the famous book that's kind of like one of the Indian Bibles, Hindu Bibles, even though it's not strictly religious. It's a novel, it's a story, but there's wisdom contained within it. So that's an example of something that I've been reading and spending my time feeling into the symbology behind the really powerful learnings that have come from pretty close connections to source, pretty high consciousness states that this wisdom was downloaded through in the form of a really engaging novel. So I've been spending a lot of time reading, for example, and I've also been doing a lot of worldly research, a lot of research around things that I previously was kind of living under a rock with. I've been very penciled into seeing, if you've watched The Social Dilemma, the Netflix documentary about how social media traps users into staying on it. But one of the big pieces of it being that maybe this wasn't from The Social Dilemma, but just the idea that when someone engages in something on social media, that it continues to show people more of what they want to see. And so they see and because the average person spends 7 hours on their phone and of screen time a day, they're immersed in a reality that is full of subjective bias because they're only seeing people that they like that keep telling them the same opinions, versus when people were as a family in front of a TV and one show is played at a time and everyone's just got now we're watching your kind of show and it's more of like a rom-com, and then the next day someone wants to watch an action movie and okay, cool, I got to surrender my preference, and now we're watching the news because dad wants to watch it, but we don't really care about that. But all the different forms of entertainment and different perspectives of the world are all being consumed by everyone that's shared in that experience. Whereas now people are tunnel visioning into the topics that they already are obsessed with. And so they're forming a very subjective view of the world. And that's what I did as well. I wanted to stay in my pocket of spirituality, stay in my pocket of personal development, and was not wanting to be around or understand things like history or politics or worldly concerns or economics. I didn't really care. or religion. Whereas now I'm very, very interested in studying the world, history, different sciences. And I've been doing a lot of that research and a lot of that learning, and I'm absolutely loving it. And it feels important to me to understand the world if I want to be able to have meaningful perspectives on life. How can I give meaningful perspectives on life if I'm just sharing from a really strong subjective bias and a really tunnel visioned view of the world? So in a nutshell, I'm kind of, from one lens, the part of me that really does want to be phenomenal at what I do as a speaker and a teacher is being very proactive and long-term and in a really fun learning season. Now, because I'm at the start of June, so in a month, I think pretty much to the day, I will be starting my 3 months of meditation in India. And yeah, I feel that when I get back, there will probably be a bit of a shift into serving with a tool that I can give people that I'm 100% sold on the purity and the power of, which is meditation. So I'll probably be serving more and learning slightly less. But at the moment, and for this year, I've just been learning so much. Learning, reading, chilling, embodying. That's been a lot that's been on my radar and what's been in my awareness. And so I've really been questioning the integrity of how I want to show up in the world. And I've really been slowing the pace at which I've been approaching my career. And I've been considering things a bit more thoroughly and deeply, considering, do I want to be on social media, or do I want to serve through other mechanisms? Maybe I want to, instead of just get rid of my social media accounts and just in my description, not even get rid of the accounts, but just say it in the bio, hey, your time's going to be better spent off social media, so get off. Because my social media time is very low and I've got my screen time down very low. And I believe that massively positively impacts my fulfillment level, which I see as the purpose of life. So I've just been playing with what's integrity look like for me. And yeah, very introspective. And I'm totally cool with that season, but it's definitely different. A bit slower based, a bit more internal, a bit less productive in terms of output, and being more inputting things and more self-focused, catching up a lot with friends, but not out there in a massive way to drill service and hit lots of reps. It's been more, hey, I'm just going to chill and I'm going to enjoy what life has to offer. I'm going to spend more time rejuvenating and chilling and receiving wisdom and working on my embodiment and meditating and stillness, and you get the gist, right? The other big thing that's been in my awareness is relationship. Such a big priority for me over the last year. And the reason why is because, you know, I perceive that life is not about the things that I narrow in on from an attached perspective, meaning life's not about my desperate need to be wildly successful and prove how good I am. And life's about experiencing presence and receiving magic moments and connection and what these are just examples. And so if I look at my life and I look at the area where I've got the biggest struggle, the most challenge, and the area that I find the most difficult, it is intimate relationship. And I'm in a beautiful relationship with a body and mind that and a heart that I've been slowly opening and supporting for a long time. And I still find it very difficult to feel safe in intimacy and romantic connection. And so it's been a really big focus area of mine, and I spend a lot of time journaling on how to show up like in that encounter and what could I have said differently, and having chats with Shana in our relationship and reading about relationship and getting perspectives and doing therapy work. Just, it's been taking up a lot of time, and it feels like a really important priority for me as well. When I'm in India, it's not going to be getting any attention, which will be interesting. But even that, I feel so grateful for the support, to be with a supportive and a loving partner that is willing to stay by me as I follow my heart, even if it means that I'm heading off overseas for such a long period of time. So, yeah. So that's been a really big focal point as well. And it just feels like the reason I really wanted to do this podcast episode, this diary entry, and it's also late at night. It's the final week before I go away, and it's been a real stretch doing all the requirements to get myself ready to go. And I'm going to be releasing, like, I'm doing lots of podcast episodes for when I go. So at least every couple of weeks, there'll be a new podcast episode coming out, and a bunch of videos and quotes and sharing things that I'm passionate about, and drip feeding wisdom still. That felt really aligned to do before I went away. So I've been stretched. I just finished running the 3-day Art of Fulfillment workshop, which is 12 hours a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's Monday now. So I'm tired. That's the bottom line in this moment. Definitely stretching myself this week and last week. So what was the piece I'm getting at here? What was I getting at? Oh yeah, why I even wanted to do this. I wanted to do this because I've definitely felt uncomfortable with the shift in approach to social media and work. I felt very uncomfortable with the fact that I've been communicating less online, and as a result, I've kind of felt like I'm so used to sharing what's alive for me with the world, but because I've been so internal, what's been alive for me in the world has been so with me, and I just feel like I haven't wanted to be honest with you, communicate what's present for me to the world, because it hasn't felt like I want to share my business for a period of time. And that felt sacred, and that felt important. And so this episode feels very therapeutic, and it feels vulnerable because I'm wanting to bridge the gap between what's happening within me and what you are all aware of. Yeah, I know that you're intelligent enough to soak in what's present for me by the content that I share through the podcast and whatnot. And I just feel like I've been holding back some things that I've been sitting with. And this is pretty much a look into what's present for me. So I've been spending lots of time meditating, lots of time with myself. I've been deeply devoted to serving my one-to-one clients and really present with how I can be of most service to people in workshops, and if I'm facilitating or assisting at a retreat, or fully there. And yeah, not really giving too much of a crap about creating crazy, awesome social media content when I haven't even been valuing being on social media. So it's been a weird time, and I felt a bit of a disconnect of I'm feeling all these things come up. I spend ages every day sitting in front of my altar, meditating, reading about spirituality, advanced or ancient spiritual texts. I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm just keeping that to myself, and I'm not sharing it with people. And I'm not used to having such a separation between my reality and the online world. And so I would like to continue to share what's alive for me, because I really feel it's important and very values aligned for me to be an open book, so that I can feel free in my expression and know that I don't have to try to control what I share. It's not that I've wanted to portray something different recently. It's just I couldn't be bothered portraying anything at all. So I really stand for authentic, consistent, vulnerable sharing so that my humanity can get out there and hopefully allow as many people as possible to feel safe within their own. And that's why it's felt important for me to share all this stuff. And if you've got value from these shares, then epic. I think the main message through this is there's a lot of value in being able to prioritize our character. I'm going to do another podcast episode on this, but being able to prioritize our connection to ourself. And 3-4 years ago, I didn't even have the ability to spend time by myself because I was too scared of being alone. But now it just feels like an absolute essential for me to know myself and be authentic in the world. And it's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. And so the invitation here is prioritizing your well-being, prioritizing your sense of wholeness, and learning to develop the greatest self-worth that you can. And to me, there's no better way for that than meditation. The meditation practice that I've been doing for the last 7 odd years has been chipping away at my consciousness, in a way, chipping away at the fear and the stress in my system and the insecurities in my system. And it's just continued to open me to my heart and open me to the truths that the universe abide by and the way that the universe works. I've been able to see it more clearly and become more of what I actually am. I already am that, but just take away some of those layers. I'm getting tired now, so I'm getting wordy and kind of rambling a bit. I'm just going to leave it there. I feel like that gives you enough of a gist of what's alive for me. I want you to know that I'm going to continue to do podcast episodes. You'll see them come out. There's going to be one coming out a week between now and June, and then between June and August, there'll be a podcast every couple of weeks, and YouTube videos still going out. So I'm still wanting to share as much as I can, but I'm just going to be offline for a while. And I'm really excited to get back. And, well, I'm excited for what the unknown has. I don't know what's going to happen. Spending a ridiculous amount of time meditating. I've never done anywhere near that level of meditation. So there's a big unknown for me. But I feel like I'm going to have a life-changing experience in some way, and get back require, like, it's probably going to take years to integrate it, but in more of an immediate integration kind of way, recovery, rest, etc. I'll probably need a month after I get back, and maybe I'll feel inspired to share straight away. But I'm excited when the time is right to share what I learn from the experience and teach you to meditate if I haven't already. So, yeah. The only last thing I want to talk to before I wrap this up is, why am I going to do Vedic meditation? And I might do a whole episode on this, but I'll paraphrase it in here. Well, I'm going to become a Vedic meditation teacher. And that the reason why is because although I have One Giant Mind teacher certification and have taught that technique for years, it's the same technique really, but the mantras which underpin the way that the technique is practiced, because it's a mantra-based practice, they're customized mantras, and there is a globalized community of people. When you get initiated into or taught how to practice Vedic meditation, you're given your own custom mantra. When you have that mantra and you invest in that tradition, the tradition gives back. You have teachers all around the world, Vedic meditation teachers, transcendental meditation teachers, of which you can go and attend and participate, free weekly group meditations to stay consistent and do advanced learning courses and whatnot through that tradition, through that whole cohort of teachers that have been embodying this wisdom for decades in some cases. And the wisdom is the most profound wisdom that I've learned through the Vedic tradition. Wisdom that stems from the Yoga Sutras of Maharishi Patanjali, the wisdom that comes from books like the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Puranas. That there are so many. There's the Upanishads, which is a series of stories, and pretty much the oldest living tradition and the most potent wisdom. So Joe Dispenza's amazing, and a lot of his wisdom has come from Vedic wisdom. Let's say Deepak Chopra was a student of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who founded TM, which is Vedic meditation, just in another legal term. And I've never studied something that's felt as true as what I've learned through Vedic wisdom. And what I teach through the Art of Fulfillment and the advanced courses that I run, all the models and everything have been influenced by Vedic wisdom. And I remember when I learned it for the first time in 2017, when I learned to meditate, and 2018, I really dove into an advanced course that had 6 retreats over the year, over the 12 months, and then did it again, and then did even another advanced course, which had another 6 retreats. And the wisdom that I was learning just felt true. And it was the first time I ever had an experience of hearing something that didn't make sense to me, because the wisdom directly through the Vedic tradition can be quite cryptic, because it's like I'm looking for a particular word. It's like head exploding. There's an actual normal phrase for what I'm trying to say. But it's overwhelming for the mind, because it's using the mind to lose the mind. And the wisdom is quite cryptic and advanced. And the wisdom that I teach is a powerful, it's not just Vedic wisdom, but it's very informed by Vedic wisdom. But even though it was cryptic, I never learned something before that felt, these are true. I can feel that they're true. And I'd learnt from Dr. John Demartini before, who's like, teaches the same philosophy in like a really intellectual way. And because he was teaching it so intellectually, I didn't feel it was true, because the resonance of the way in which it's taught has a sensory impact, where there's that gnosis experience. Gnosis, that Greek word of to know something at a feeling level. When you hear something 100 times, but it finally drops, you're like, now I get it. That's a gnosis, like Gnosis. And all of what I was learning just felt like gnosis, like a knowing. So I've gotten more from the Vedic tradition than I have from any other body of knowledge, even though what I've studied is quite broad, and I've gone deep into a lot of what I've studied. Bottom line is, it feels like an honor and a privilege to have qualified to be able to do this course. Not everyone can do this course that I'm doing, this teacher training. If someone was to go through and study the required prerequisite courses and retreats, it would take 3 years minimum for someone to be able to, from starting to meditate to being qualified to be considered to go. And I've been meditating for about 7 years, and I've done all the things multiple times. And so I'm stoked. And there isn't a technique in the world that I feel has had more of a meaningful impact in my life than Vedic meditation. And so I am stoked to be becoming a Vedic meditation teacher, because what I also noticed, and this is going to be the last little piece before I wrap this up, is that teaching the Art of Fulfillment and the body of wisdom that I do is so supportive, because it makes everything make sense, what I teach. And you can ask anyone that's graduated and gone through any of my workshops that I run, whether it was the Art of Courage or the Art of Fulfillment, now that I've changed the name to that, or my advanced spiritual retreats, or the Heart's Prayer, it's all just truth. It can't be contradicted because it's just true. I didn't make it up. I just contained it and packaged it to be very easy to understand. But it's all just truths. They're just true. And even though I was giving people truths through these workshops, to understand it and to have that, I get it, this makes sense, doesn't mean that it's embodied. The way to embody universal truth it can be embodied in lots of different ways, but my experience is that the most potent form and way of embodying it is through Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation, synonyms. And there is, like, if someone gave me $1 million and was like, hey, which is the question I ask guests if I get guests on the podcast, as you guys know, if I ask myself the same last question, someone comes, gives you $1 million for you to give them the most potent tool or piece of advice you could possibly give, what would that be? Practice Vedic meditation. Because the actual practice expands our awareness. That awareness expansion, it also helps us to process stress and become more connected to the insight that comes from that witness waking up within. And that's where we can make aligned decisions in our life. We get to actually see what's happening and open. That's like waking up. I had an awakening because I can see now. And I was stuck in the matrix. Well, when we actually can get some altitude, we can witness what's true. We actually awaken the capacity for free will, because most of us are stuck in patterning and we don't actually notice what we're doing. And that's how I was living my life until meditation woke me up. And there is nothing that's been a bigger gift for me in my life or made my life more fulfilling, meaningful, and enriching than that practice. And so when I get back, come learn in person. It must be done in person. Come learn to meditate with me. I'd love it. It'd be such an honor. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm going over there. I'm doing a 3-week holiday in Europe before then, which I leave in a few days' time to go on. And then I go straight to there for 3 months. I'll be offline the whole time, but there will be content rolling. I'm excited to see and to live out this beautiful chapter of my life, which is more internal, and just witness the way that it naturally progresses, and just to be there to experience it all. It feels super epic. And I'm well aware that there'll be seasons where I'm fully in the world, driving growth, being of service, busy and tired. And it's just not this chapter. Yeah. It's very internal, and that's how it's been for the last 6 months. So that's the end of this podcast episode. If you get value from this, please check out other episodes that you haven't checked out, because I kind of record these episodes almost like I'm creating a library of wisdom to go deeper into topics that I feel are important, and would love for you to get that wisdom if it feels aligned, and leave us a review for the podcast. Anywho, that's enough for me. Love you guys to bits. Thank you for being a part of my life. And yeah, thanks for listening to my journey. Lots of love. Peace out.